a very public campaign to change lawmakers' minds about marijuana in Kansas. Will it work? Plus, some lawmakers recommend major changes to the Department of Children and Families. The question, will their colleagues agree? And an expensive ouster from Sedgwick County government after months of accusations and counterclaims. Can the county commission get back on track now? That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. This is Kansas Week. I'm your host, Pilar Pedraza. We begin today with a departure from Sedgwick County that's been a long time coming. Craig Andrus with KSN News shows us how much it will cost the county to finally oust the embattled county manager, Michael Scholes.
First, Sedgwick County Councilor Eric Yost stepping down, getting an agreed-upon payout of $77,000. At the time, 3 commissioners who wanted him out called it a good deal. This week, a separation agreement of $205,000 with the county manager.
It is a lot of money. I think it's going to be easily $400,000 to $500,000, if not more, when you add it all together.
Commissioner Richard Ranzow this week saying with attorney fees from last fall leading up to the current questions over the county manager and some county commissioners, the process over the last year could top $500,000. Some commissioners who publicly say they wanted the county manager to move on say the 2 departures will allow the county to move into the future.
I think this concludes a chapter in Sedgwick County history that has significantly eroded and degraded the stature and the influence and the respect for county government in our community.
Dave Unruh saying it took some time to come to an agreement on separation with County Manager Scholes. He also says he hopes the county leadership reputation can move forward. Meanwhile, Ranzow says he hopes this can get the county leaders to get back to focusing solely on the business of running the county.
We'll continue to work as usual, and this is generally a slow time for us, but we'll keep doing what we have to do, and we'll see what happens next year.
And again, that was Craig Andrus from KSN News reporting. Thanks to KSN for sharing that story with us. Here to help us take a closer look at today's topics, we're joined by Diane Leffler with the Wichita Eagle. Thank you so much. And Representative Tom Sawyer, the new House Minority Leader, and Representative Dan Hawkins, the new House Majority Leader. Thank you both. And I'm going to start off with Diane, actually, because you've been covering this actually more than I have as far as what's going on at the county. There are a lot of layers here, and even today I was getting an email asking, I don't get it. What's going on here? How does all of this work together? So can you kind of give us a brief press us to kind of bring us up to date?
Sure, brief.
Maybe a problem there.
No, it actually is fairly simple. I mean, you've had some changes in the commission. The commissioners who are in the majority have wanted to get rid of Michael Scholes for quite some time. Their stated reason for doing that is that there have been some high-level departures from the county, and on their way out the door, those people said the reason we're leaving is because we don't want to work with this guy. But it all got kind of entangled with the whole FBI investigation of Michael O'Donnell, which of course has led to some charges against him for wire fraud and money laundering in connection with his handling of campaign accounts. Michael Scholes provided apparently some information to the FBI during that investigation, and so there was a question asked of whether they could oust him for doing that. That brought them into conflict with federal whistleblower statutes that protect people who turn in their bosses in the government, I guess is the best way to say it. So the whole thing became a big hairy mess. The FBI launched another investigation to find out if that whistleblower law had been violated. We don't know what the status of that is right now, but the whole thing has been a giant nightmare.
Yeah, giant nightmare. Very good way to put it. And a lot of sniping back and forth. We were commenting with my photographer as we finished covering this story earlier this week. We interviewed all 5 of the commissioners, and they're bad-mouthing each other right in front of each other.
Oh yeah, that has been one of the more bizarre aspects of this. Was, we're having these hallway press conferences, and commissioners are standing there literally accusing their colleagues of doing things, and they are they're standing like right
Closer than
here,
you and I.
just waiting, waiting for their chance to get on camera to say what they want to say about that commissioner.
Yep.
So it was really, it was kind of a surreal sort of scene there at the county.
Very much so. And this is where I'm going to bring in our lawmakers here. You guys are both elected officials. You've worked with colleagues that maybe you don't always get along with. The job still has to get done. And one thing that all of the commissioners said was, hopefully the commission can move forward and we can work from here on out for the best of the county. Is that possible? That's my question for you guys. I'm going to start with Dan.
Yeah, I think it truly is, and I think it's actually interesting what Diane was talking about, how they would literally go after each other in the presence of the other one there. In Topeka, things sometimes can get very tense, but I don't think we do that, Tom. I don't think that you see that level of discourse in the House of Representatives. Now, there's times where people get passionate at the well, but generally we don't go after each other personally like they have here in the county. So I actually think that this is probably a good move, a good first step, so they can start the healing process. So I think that's probably going to help them.
I certainly hope so. I hope that this creates a new beginning, everybody can get on a fresh page and start working together, because it does look very bad. And it puts a big black mark on Sedgwick County government, and hopefully things will be much better going forward.
Well, and certainly we've got 2 new commissioners coming in January, so there'll be a change in the dynamics there. We'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens, I guess. But turning to our state lawmakers, we've got lots of changes going on with this next session coming up. And after 18 months of investigation, a special task force on child welfare this week came up with a good 24 recommendations for improving how we protect our children. I was there as they made their final recommendations and filed this report with Cake News.
There are children's lives at stake. I mean, we have over 7,500 children in the system right now. They're depending on us. We didn't just throw out a whole bunch of recommendations and say, take your pick. Okay. We actually prioritized them.
Among the top priorities, making more funds available to bring in more child welfare workers and pay those already on the job better. Another top concern, saving workers time on the job by consolidating multiple different computer systems.
If you have to enter 9 computer systems to help a child, that's a hindrance. That's a work obstacle.
Even as the task force was finalizing its recommendations, it was learning new details about the child welfare system, like the fact Kansas has 140 children waiting for beds at psychiatric residential treatment facilities.
The state created a shortage of beds by underfunding, essentially starving some of those facilities so that they could no longer operate.
The problems surrounding DCF run from children spending the night on office floors to a lawsuit alleging the state is making children homeless. Lawmakers are hopeful one member of the task force will help these recommendations become laws to better protect children. She's Governor-elect Laura Kelly.
I don't think it's a bipartisan issue anymore. I think you could see from this task force that this is all Kansans coming together, recognizing that we are not doing right by our kids and their families at this point.
And this is certainly something I've talked with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, very concerned about what's going on with DCF and with child welfare. I assume, minority leader, majority leader, this is one of the first things we're going to see coming up this session. Dan?
Yeah, I think that the child welfare task force has been working real hard. They've actually worked for the better part of this year at studying this whole situation, seeing where they can go. I think it's such a difficult system, and if you look countrywide, we may not be really as bad as what some of the states are. I've heard some reports where some states are really in bad shape. So I think that although we have our problems, and we have a lot, I think that maybe we can work our way out of it. I really believe so.
Well, I'm optimistic. I'm glad that this committee's worked long and hard, and they came up with a bipartisan proposal. I mean, there's a lot of bipartisan support for this proposal. Lots of recommendations. DCF, there's a lot of problems, and it's going to take a long time to right that ship. But hopefully, we'll get on the right track this session. Hopefully, it'll be very bipartisan, and obviously, the new governor sitting on the task force, she's going to be well aware of the issues, and hopefully, that can help make some improvements this session.
I'm going to play the skeptical reporter here for a moment because
You're stealing my
It's
job.
easy when it's DCF.
I mean, I've been watching this for 20 years now,
Yeah.
and it's always been a mess.
Yeah.
You know, you have kids who shouldn't be in the system who are. You have kids who should be in the system who aren't. We've had, you know, just this whole raft of problem after problem after problem. It doesn't seem to matter whether the administration is Republican or Democrat. And every couple of years they come along and say, okay, we're reforming it. And, you know, these reforms, this time it's going to work. What's different about this?
You know, an agency like DCF that's so large, it's tough. I mean, Representative Hawkins pointed out that a lot of states, I mean, this is not unique to Kansas. I mean, this type of agency is tough. And it is a fine line. I mean, they have a really tough job trying to decide which children to put in custody. As you say, they miss sometimes. You know, sometimes there are kids that definitely should have been protected that weren't, and at times they take kids away from parents that, I mean, it's a really tough job. So it's not easy answers, but I do feel good that the legislature's looking hard at it. There's a lot of recommendations. You know, some of these may be very small steps, but I think any steps we can do to help improve the situation and, you know, help kids. I mean, any kids that we save, you know, it's helpful. I mean,
Well,
we got to do that.
You know, the other question that I'd have too, if I may, is I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're both reporters. We always have questions.
But the other question that I have too is, you know, where's the oversight in this? Every time that I have tried to acquire information from this agency, I've run headlong into a brick wall of that's confidential. Every time lawmakers that I know have tried to acquire, you know, detailed information, it's the same
It's
thing.
been one of the frustrations. You know, it's a large agency, and probably part of the problem is the non-computer systems. I mean, I can't imagine how anybody keeps track of anything. It doesn't even make sense that they have 9 different systems. But yeah, it's tough. It's not easy, and we've all been frustrated.
I acknowledge
with
that, but you know.
Let's bring Dan into this conversation.
Well, and
obviously.
also the fact that you're dealing with privacy information. It's hard sometimes to get to the bottom of some of those things just simply because, you know, those cases are private cases, ones that you just can't throw out there in the public view. So sometimes it just doesn't lend itself to the transparency that we would really like to see. So that makes it difficult too. I think we're going to see, as time goes along with the task force, you're going to see more oversight and I really believe the Children and Seniors Committee is going to be boosted a little bit, made a little bit more robust. You know, probably have a lot more emphasis put on that committee that's been put in the past. It's just kind of been not so much of a real key committee. I think it's going to have to become a key committee to really have the oversight that we need.
And we certainly need more oversight, and we do need more transparency. Even though, as Representative Hawkins says, there's some definitely privacy issues there. But that agency, it's been tough getting information, and we've got to do better.
And I don't think we're going to solve doing better right this moment as much as we all would like to, I think. So we're going to move on to another topic that we do expect to come up quickly at the State House next month: sports betting. The interim Fed and State Joint Committee heard from supporters this last week, but hasn't made any recommendations just yet. I was there and shared this story with Cake News.
The number one sports bet in the world is soccer.
Kansas lawmakers heard from leaders in the sports betting industry Tuesday during an interim committee meeting. They say they want to know how best to implement the idea in Kansas.
There's just so many states that are just all over it. And I mean, they are going hard.
And Kansas wants a piece of that pie. Estimates in this hearing an additional $5 million or so in taxes for the state.
It's not going to build any highways. It's not going to pay for any schools. It's not that big of a deal.
Some worry the estimated extra cash won't cover the costs.
It frankly doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because when we talk about regulatory costs, when we talk about gambling addiction, when we talk about enforcement costs for $5 million, I can't see that that's justified.
Though taxes could be higher than current estimates, but so could addiction rates.
That's always part of it too, and that's why part of the funds that come into the state will go to that particular fund to help.
Especially with concerns about how to make sure gamblers are of legal age if Kansas allows online or phone app gambling.
If you get children 16 years of age watching a football game with in-play gambling going on about whether the next field goal will be to the right or the left, I think we're going down a very bad road.
Now, I've got to say that personally, until the Supreme Court ruling came down on this, I never even thought of live in-play sports betting. It's not something that just came up in my life. But as I'm looking at it and listening to this debate, it really does sound very complicated, trying to figure out how to make this happen. And it sounds like it is going to happen. Tom?
Well, the fact of the matter, it's going on now. It's just illegal. I mean, there's a lot of sports betting happening, and the estimates are all over the place. You know, last year in committee we heard it could be as much as 100 million. So you're talking about from 5 million to 100 million. In terms of so that tells you nobody really knows how much is going on out there and how much we can capture if we try to regulate it. So I mean, the whole point is it's going on right now, unregulated. States are trying to regulate it, tax it, control it better. And it's a complicated issue. It's not easy, but states are moving fast on it. That ruling came out, and states are trying to move quickly. Mm-hmm. I think in Kansas, we got to make sure we really study this issue and do it right. But you know, I never bought a lottery. I've never bought a lottery ticket. I personally don't gamble. I don't believe in gambling. But there's a lot of people who do it. They do it responsibly, and I think we ought to. It's going on. We ought to really take a look at. We need to regulate it and tax it.
I would agree with Tom, actually, and Tom actually has a seat in the committee where that'll all take place, or he has in the past. I've never been on Fed and State Affairs, so I'm not privy to some of the stuff that Tom's talking about, but I do know that it is happening. So we really do need to regulate it and probably get a little bit of tax revenue. I think the thing that probably bothers me the most is that everybody wants a piece of that. it's like they're all standing in line wanting to get their little nugget of that.
When you take that $5 million and spread it around, everybody wants a piece of it. It's 50 cents.
Yep.
Which is a good question as to why I should, gamble with the state as opposed to, I would assume that this would have to be another state-owned gambling enterprise.
Yeah.
Why would I want to gamble with the state when I could just gamble with my bookie?
Well, hopefully, because it's legal now, and you aren't taking the risk anymore. I mean, and that's one of the things that gets into. If the tax gets too high, people will keep doing it illegally. But if it's taxes, we're talking around 6%, something like that. The studies are people will go ahead as legal, go the legal route. But that's one of those fine lines.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring up one more question here. I know as I was finishing the conversation with Representative Carmichael at the end of that meeting, one of the concerns he brought up was that he felt the convention that Senator Estes was saying that lawmakers should go to learn more about this was a junket paid for by gambling lobbyists. And I know the Eagle kind of followed up on that. How much of a concern is that of lobbyists taking Kansas lawmakers out on junkets?
Well, I think it's always a concern when lobbyists take lawmakers on junkets. But one thing too here is, this is not, this is mature technology we're dealing with here. I lived in Nevada. Nevada has had sports gambling. You could bet on almost anything since before I was born, and social order doesn't seem to have broken down there. We heard the same arguments when the casinos came up, that if we had casinos, there was going to be all these problems. I can't say that too many of those problems have actually materialized. I mean, there have been some. I won't minimize. There are issues with problem gambling and those kinds of things. No. But your problem gambler is probably going to find a place to gamble anyway. And whether he's betting on sports, whether he's betting on the casino table, whether he's betting, with friends, those things are going to happen. And, give me $5 on the Chargers.
I'll have to because I don't follow football, so I'll give you whatever you want on football. Moving on to another topic, a total of 25 newcomers to the Kansas House will also have a say in all of this that we've been talking about when they take office for the very first time in January. So, what are their priorities? 25 new state representatives who've never held a legislative office before, plus 3 previous representatives elected back after time away from the state house, and 6 others appointed midterm, now elected for the first time. This is the freshman class of the 2019 House of Representatives in Kansas. And according to a report in the Topeka Capital Journal, they're coming into office with their own ideas of what Kansas needs to work on. Heston's new representative, Stephen Owens, wants Kansas to concentrate on economic growth by supporting locally owned businesses rather than trying to lure big companies to the state. Rui Hsu, the first Chinese American elected to the Kansas House, wants to concentrate on education funding and Medicaid expansion. While Michael Capps of Wichita, appointed last year but now elected, wants to concentrate on fixing the Kansas foster care system. He says the privatized system in Kansas isn't working. It reduces children to a file number and money. Earlier, DCF did accuse Capps of emotionally abusing boys in foster care. Ron Howard of Wichita, a total newcomer, wants to work for greater transparency in education funding and funneling more education dollars into classroom activities. Okay, so my lawmakers, my House Majority Leader, any of these topics surprise you at all? Tom?
No, they are the topics that we've been, Medicaid expansion's big on their education, jobs. I mean, those are the kind of the big topics we've been talking about. So I don't, and DCF, all those things. So I don't see any surprises there. And at 25 new people isn't a surprise either. At the Kansas House, if you look every year, that's kind of one of our smaller classes, really. We always have a lot of turnover. So, but it's a nice mix. We get new people in, they have enthusiasm, and keeps all of us older people on our toes, and it's good. And we have some people that have been there a while, that have some experience to kind of temper some of that, and it's a good balance.
Well, one thing we have to really realize is those are 25 people that come into the legislature with different experiences. Each one of them has some experience that they're going to bring that's going to be very important to them, something that they're going to want to work on. And we've heard a lot in the last few days from the various newcomers. Cheryl Helmer from Wellington, Winfield area, somewhere down in there. Winfield. She's she's really interested in the education area and some of that stuff. We've got some people. I think it was I heard Representative Lynn from Johnson County. Mental health was something that was very important to her. So it seems like every one of them has something that's important to them. You heard Stephen Owens on there. Stephen Owens talking about our economy and how growing business is going to be important. So every one of them has something that they're gonna want to do. They're gonna jump in and get their feet wet, and they're gonna find out just how tough it is to pass legislation. Won't they, Tom?
They'll find that out pretty fast.
So Dion, historically, as we have covered the State House, as you have covered the State House over the years, how much impact do you usually see from the newcomers?
I think it varies. Generally, I've seen more impact when a House member has moved to the Senate, but maybe that's just me. But it seems like they come from the House and they go to the Senate and they start they get a little more active and involved at that point. A lot of the newcomers, stop me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't see a whole lot of policy initiative coming, and honestly, I didn't see any new ideas expressed here. I'm going to go up there, I'm going to fix school funding. I'm going to go up there, I'm going to...
They haven't tried for the last who knows how many years, right?
It's like...
We always try to actually instruct our people that you need to learn the process. The process is so important that you understand how everything works. If you just jump in, sometimes you just flounder because you're trying to get something done and you don't even understand how to get it done yet.
Well, talking about jumping in, there are some Kansans who want to jump in and influence their lawmakers in a certain direction. Another topic expected to come up this year is legalizing, at the very least, medical marijuana. One man here in Wichita wants you to call lawmakers in support of the idea. We turn to Jasmine Haynes of KSN News for an explanation.
A billboard with a big message.
If it's perfectly okay to drink yourself to death with whatever kind of alcohol you choose, then why isn't it okay to smoke a joint?
A sign near the intersection of West and Maple with images of a man drinking and smoking, pointing out one is accepted, the other illegal. It's one of two billboard campaigns launched yesterday by the pro-legalization group Fire It Up Kansas. The second billboard near the 8000 block of East Kellogg with a different bold statement.
The image on it is a person with their hands handcuffed behind their back, and it states, "We're not criminals, we're consumers."
all part of the push to fully legalize marijuana in Kansas. Golden says the changes coming to the legislature with newly elected officials has empowered their fight.
With our new governor that has publicly spoken in favor, maybe we have a better chance.
He hopes the billboards will move people into action.
I hope the people that see this thing will start contacting their representatives.
A conversation starter that Golden hopes will help pave the way for legalizing marijuana.
And before I jump into what lawmakers think about all of this, I'm going to kind of touch bases with you, Diane. I know as I was covering the governor's race, of course, Laura Kelly did mention that she was in favor of medical marijuana, not just marijuana use in general. And any one of the gubernatorial candidates who said that they were in favor of legalizing marijuana got a lot more positive reaction from voters at debates that I attended than those who said just absolutely none. Is that kind of jive with what you've seen?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I saw too. You know, it's getting harder and harder to argue against medical, specifically. For people, you know, both my parents died of cancer, and you know, marijuana. You know, they spent the last few, you know, months of their lives on heavy-duty painkillers, opioid drugs that, you know, just completely knocked them out. And, you know, it's hard to argue that if somebody can deal with their pain and make themselves hungry by smoking marijuana, that somehow that's less safe than taking an opioid painkiller.
Okay, so turning to our lawmakers, we don't have a whole lot of time, but each of you, where do you stand on this, and where do you think the legislature is going to go on it?
Well, I do support it. I think there's growing support amongst the public. You see it in states like Oklahoma and Missouri supporting it, so I think we're moving in that direction. And I think the legislature is starting to move that way. It's getting closer.
Okay, Dan?
You know, I think Tom's exactly right that the legislature is starting to move that direction. I think that we have to be careful exactly what we do, that we understand, and that's probably one thing that's been said a lot is that we haven't had a good discussion. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there's not a fairly robust discussion this year. Last year we did pass, actually I introduced the amendment to make CBD oil legal, and we got that passed. So we've, and hemp, we're doing some stuff with hemp. So we're moving.
We'll have to see where it goes.
It's slow.
All right. Well, one thing that's not slow is this show. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. We have once again run out of time, and I hope that you've enjoyed our discussion here. I hope you have as well. We'd love to continue the discussion with you online. Just look for Pilar Pedraza TV or KPTS Channel 8 on Facebook and Twitter. For now, have a great week.